After a quick pick and choose of the boards for my scrap pile, I ended up with these two that I'll be using to make the beautiful vase that you see on your screen. Hello and welcome to the channel. So let's jump right into the build. I started off by cutting the boards to approximately 8 inches wide. I only used 3 for this project because I don't want it to be too tall. And I took the boards over to the table saw to rip off the imperfections of the board. I did as much of that as I could. The goal is to get all sides of the board as flat as possible so that they can be glued together. After ripping the boards down, I ended up with a height of 8¼ inches. If you don't have as much material to remove from the board, you probably end up with a much taller piece, which is perfect. This is one of those projects where you can't go wrong with the dimensions that you choose.
At this point, I want to quickly remind you that all you need is a little bit of faith and some action.
As you can see, I'm using wood glue. My go-to glue is always Titebond Quick and Thick. And then one important step you don't want to miss out is to use a wet rag to wipe all the excess glue off the boards. You don't want to miss that step. So on Etsy, you can see it's selling for $35 to $45. It does sell because you can look at the bottom there. It's showing that it was sold in December. So it's a good product. It's handmade and there's a potential for sales. The key to that will be to just stage it and market it well. Now back to the video. One of the things I like about the Titebond Quick and Thick glue is that it dries pretty fast. And so after about a half an hour, give and take, I just freehandedly sketched the vase on the board. This is handmade and it's rustic, so what better way to do this, other than making it handmade, everything handmade. And then you just use a jigsaw to cut out the vase based on the sketch you have made on the board. A scroll saw would be perfect for this, for a much more finer cut. However, it would take much longer to do this, so the jigsaw works out just fine. You'll just have to do a lot of sanding to smooth out especially the inside, the inside cuts on the vase. I don't use a jigsaw that much, so I am a little bit rusty when it comes to using it, but if you're comfortable with using it, this should be a very, very easy project. If you have a rotary tool like a Dremel, this will be really helpful because you can easily sand off the inside of the vase. Otherwise, you can just use a sandpaper and hand sand it. It might take a longer time, but you want it in there to be as smooth as possible, not perfect. And then over on the band sander, I'm just sanding off as much of the outside of the vase as possible to remove as much material to make it smooth. For this one, I'm using dark walnut, the Polyurethane stain 2-in-1, but you could use your stain of choice. I should mention that off camera I had drilled the insert for the test tube with using a 7/8 inch Forstner bit. I'll put a link in the description to a previous video I did showing you how I drill the hole for a propagation planter. So this step is totally optional. I'm using a little piece of 220 grit sandpaper just before the stain dries off, and I'm sanding off the corners of the vase, the outside corners, and I think I did the inner corners as well, but it adds some contrast to the finish. Optional, but it adds some more detail and beauty to the end piece. And that's it. It looks very handmade to me. Let me know what you think. I like it. As usual, please feel free to share it with somebody else you think might like this video and want to make one of these. You may have seen from previous videos that I did some other projects where I used these test tubes for propagation planters. If you don't have those test tubes handy, you can just drill a hole large enough so you can put a stem of a rose or a faux plant or false plant that you have. This is another optional step. If you do have a laser engraver, you can just add words to it on the other side to personalize it. That's what I did for the first one, which was for a client. But this is totally optional. You can also add mounting hardware to the reverse, to the back side of it, like a sawtooth hanger. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. And as usual, I hope you will have a tangible experience of God's love today. Take care and God bless.